Ladies and gentlemen, I suggest we start the rock and roll if you don't mind.
Окей, Google, есть ли вирусы под Android?
So, okay, Google,
Нет, говорит
are
нам
there any
операционный директор по безопасности
Android
Android.
viruses? And
Ну
Adrian
что ж,
Ludwig, who
я
is,
вижу, что раз
by
вы
the way,
все
security
специалисты, то, видимо,
director
с ним не
for
согласны.
Android, says no.
Поэтому
Since
продолжим,
so many guys are here, I assume you
собственно,
disagree with the gentleman.
о нас и о нашей теме
Now, let
презентации.
me tell you more
Денис Корчаков,
about our presentation. Now,
меня зовут Николай.
uh, my name is
Мы
Nikolai
расскажем вам
Goncharov,
про
and over there you
правительственную
see
группу
Denis
связи.
Gorchakov, and I'm still with MTS. He's no longer a part of the company. MTS is either the second or the first largest cell operator in the country. We actually made presentations in all the previous PhDs, and you can easily. Oh no, I'm sorry. These are different events, not just PhDs, but also Zero Nights and Anti-Fraud Russia. Well, in fact, we've been part of PhD starting from the third installation. And in fact, this presentation will sort of crown the research we've been doing for the last several years. And by the way, all these presentations are publicly available, so if you're interested, you can easily download them. Now, you know what statistics is like. Statistics is a pack of lies. According to stats, Android takes about 80% of the mobile OS market. And leading AV labs, be it Kaspersky Labs or Symantec or Trend Micro or whoever you ask, say that Russia is among the leaders globally in terms of the persistence and popularity of Android viruses. A simple explanation for that is that Russia has taken its own way in terms of payment services. Instead of plastic cards that are so popular in other countries, Russians tend to use web money transfers and payment terminals much more than elsewhere. So, according to Kaspersky security reports, Russians are among the world leaders as far as density of attacks is concerned. Again, the stats show that potentially dangerous software or malware is like 3 times more prevalent in Russia than the average on the market. And Google says that Android 5.0 is very well protected. The only problem is that pretty much nobody runs Android 5.0. Well, again, we have a very miserable stats that show how few people actually update their operating systems on their mobile devices. Well, obviously there are viruses for other operating systems, but things are not that ugly there. Well, first, WinPhone and iOS are not as prevalent as Android. However, they are growing in popularity. More and more devices start featuring them, so more viruses will hit the market. And surprisingly, a Windows Phone seems to be the best protected system, or at least the least vulnerable, at least given their popularity and their market share about 3%. Very few hackers actually care to attack it in the first place. Also, please note that iOS was initially expected to be better protected because you could only download new applications from the App Store directly. But then, as we all know, this particular feature was easily circumvented. And I think that in this respect, Windows Phone is very much like Linux or the elusive Joe. This is a pretty well-known joke in Russian about the elusive Joe whom nobody can catch because nobody gives a damn about the guy. But you probably remember that all iOS users are more than welcome to jailbreak their devices. The moment they do that, they become able to download new fancy applications from not so legal app stores, and this could be the vector of attack. In fact, we know of cases when non-jailbroken devices were indeed infected. Some vulnerabilities, for example, were found in the certificates, and in some cases, for example, people would follow phishing phishing emails, and then some application would invite him to update itself, and he would just press the yes button thinking that he's running the most secure system in the whole world. And while doing that, it would essentially delete all the AV and other protective software. Now, you might remember there was a time when Vkontakte cleansed itself of all the illegal music, and that was the time when lots of fancy applications surfaced in Vkontakte promising you access to free music, and most of them featured Trojans and backdoors and what have you. Well, I think one day we'll be able to spend money on researching vulnerabilities on iOS, but instead, now we'll tell about the research with data on Android. Obviously, malware in most cases is designed to make the authors richer. There are different ways to monetize your hacking prowess, so to speak. You can either attack content services, or you can attack, say, remote banking services, and this has become a very popular vector of attack recently. You can be attacking SMS notifications, or you can be attacking the USSD channel. And we should also mention here a number of payment systems. They are also quite popular. Well, obviously, hackers or fraudsters in this industry prefer to have not just your password and login, but also they will want to have your phone number, because that way it's very easy for you to spoof the double verification system. There are also other types of fraud, such as cryptography and PIN blockers. And there are some lockers available for iOS and Android devices. We're talking about CryptoLocker sort of systems, and now I'm told for unlocking device they demand not 1,000 rubles as they used to before, but rather 2,000 or 3,000 rubles, which is like 50 euros. There are lots of other types of attacks, such as cold DDoS and so on and so forth, but they're not as prevalent as those that we are going to discuss now. In fact, we are more interested in botnets rather than viruses. We believe that this old chain of old sequence of operations that involve those viruses has sort of petered out. Very few attackers want that. Instead, they want to operate botnets that will guarantee them with a kind of steady income. By now, most viruses are essentially full-fledged botnet clients. They collect statistics, they can perform all sorts of commands, and in most cases they will live for a long period of time on the mobile devices. In fact, they have developed a number of features that make them very comparable to their big brothers running on desktops, and this means that in order to fight them, we need to be as well equipped as we are to fight the desktop viruses. Now, let's talk let's talk about the main threats here. Still the most popular threat for mobile devices is the threat of defrauding money of your account, essentially. And for example, money can be stolen from your bank account if it's linked to your cell number. Also, your personal and confidential data can be stolen. Phishing, spam. In fact, some of these botnets feature functions that enable them to mount DDoS attacks on the net. Just to give you a stat, for a single region, sounds like it's a Russian region, but he wasn't very explicit on that. 50,000 new infections and 3 to 5 million rubles is revenue. Again, I assume we're talking per month. And you probably know this great British story of security professionals well, pretty much invading the privacy of British homeowners and using their fitness tracker information and their GPS data for their phones to track when they were out of their homes in order to burgle them, obviously. So these were security professionals from the other side of the fence, so to speak. On the control side, we need to take into account that these are mobile devices and there's something special about them. For traditional botnets, you will need CNCs, hosts, IP addresses, and your bots will talk to them on a regular basis. They will also try to evade your defenses by using fluxing, double fluxing, and changing IPs dynamically. Interestingly, most of these things are invading the mobile world now. Now, if you can discover which particular phone number is spreading the infection, you can block it. But there are headless botnets, and many botnets operate like this. They will, an infected mobile phone will execute a command, whichever phone comes from, as long as it fits a particular structure. Please know that most of them use Google Cloud Messaging, the push service from Google, in order to propagate and in order to issue commands. And there is nothing suspicious about that, right? Because you get your usual messages like that. And quite often, it is the standard Google Cloud service that issue commands for the botnets. All you need to do is just register an account there and get your ID. There have been cases when IDs like that were sent to Google, and then Google would react and block a particular account. But then it's important to remember that Google is not very fast in following your lead, so it will take them time to close it down. Now, this covers the kind of data we can collect in order to counter this threat. Well, obviously, we need the IPs and domain names of the CNCs, as well as the addresses of the sites that propagate the malware. We'll also need to learn more about the format and the composition of the commands issued by the command and control centers hosts. We'll also care about the type of tags they use. What's also useful is phone numbers, because quite often the same phone numbers will be used in order to extract money from the mobile accounts. And in some cases, when we're dealing with headed, not headless botnets, you can also find the phone numbers of the hands. Subscription IDs, well, this is something that most operators are now killing this vector. Now, if it's difficult for you to follow this anti-fraud discussion, let me make several explanations. Well, the CNC is just the host that issues commands, and then we are talking here about some collector numbers. And this is essentially a device that collects information about your account balance, for example, and the services you're subscribed to, and so on. And finally, there are cash accumulators. So this could be accounts or phone numbers that accumulate all the defrauded money for future transfers or withdrawals. Now, we are going to also talk here about anti-debugging tools and techniques. There is a reason for that. we have a very simple statement to make.
Все вредоносное программное обеспечение
All the malware,
ну, для мобильников использует
at least all the malware for mobile devices, uses IMA and IMSI controls, which means that you can launch your AV once and will run once, but it won't run the second time.
Может быть тарификация раз в сутки, раз в час, может быть навсегда внесен в блэк-лист устройства.
And a particular device can be blacklisted, say, for some time or forever. Now, geolocation obviously will work. There are different ways. It could be triangulation, it could be Wi-Fi, GPS, could be assisted GPS. Well, this essentially means that you can block the activities of the malware in particular networks, say GSM networks or Wi-Fi networks. We actually saw malware that would not work in the MTS office, can you believe it or not? And we also saw malware that would not work in Moscow. Like, it had Moscow blocked out from its area of geographical applicability, and we also found malware that would not work after 8 p.m. We are talking about full-fledged software, so it should be easily configurable. And moreover, the guys on the other side are quite smart, and for example, they will be delaying their operations and say it's only 24 hours after you install something, it will spring to action and it will never bill you, will never defraud you out of round figures, so to speak. It will use copics and cents instead. Now, if your device is already running malware and say it does crypto locking, and if you try to delete it, it will wipe your device, for example, and will assign also maximum priority to the particular application that has been locked. And this is something we have seen a number of times, and we know that it actually makes the debugging process much more difficult. I think that Kaspersky Lab covered this about a year ago. Very often they also add root exploits. Very often they are based on simple MediaTek routines. And we have seen several very simple exploits based on that, like press this button to get 10 crystals, and this is how you get a root exploit built in. And very often you can get malicious APKs that will not be discovered by any AV system you are running, and then together they combine and create the malware that will eat your system from within. Now, what's probably most difficult in the emulator is to check the connected services. So the malware, for example, can be parsing your SMS from payment service and your bank to check whether you have a particular service installed or not. And then, whenever it's connected, it will ping all the popular services just to check whether you have an account with them, whether you have a balance with them. So an analyst sometimes can be confused by this, because say the service might send you an SMS back, say no, you don't have an account with us. But A good malware will delete it, and B, well, sometimes we just disregard messages like this, even if they are not deleted. Now imagine you believe something is wrong and money is being stolen from your account. And the malware, for example, can tweak all the tech support numbers. So if you're trying to access the help desk of your particular carrier, your calls will not go through. Well, in Android 4.4, it's much more difficult to delete SMS from the log, and you still can't do anything about it. At least you can't do anything with the same phone. Like, you will see that your money is evaporating into thin air, and you can't call your operator. Quite often, malware for mobile devices is a full-fledged framework. So you have, say, a web interface for voice generation with random pages, random icons, and you also have a statistics server. So what the guys did was, first the data would be sent in plain text. So you would see, like, had you intercepted the message, you would see IMSI balance. Well, in plain text, it was easy to intercept it. Well, then they added base64 encryption, and then they added base64 with modified alphabet. So they're quite good at adapting. And interestingly, they were even able to develop a particular exploit that would enable them to bypass Kaspersky Lab antivirus. I'm sorry, it was not an exploit, it was a class. And you see what kind of a fancy name they came up for that particular class. It was called Cave Fucker. Kaspersky antivirus, obviously. So based on all this data, we claim that in anti-fraud, virtualization, debugging via Joser or any other interface of mobile emulators makes no sense. Let me prove my point. Expert analysis of the code and behavior analysis in the emulation do not give you all the extent of the data you need. In some emulators, for example, your application can run for a limited period of time, so you won't be able to collect all the information you need about its activities. For example, it can launch several hours later, and no single emulator will wait until then, right? And like Dennis has already mentioned, the application can see, for example, it's being run in an emulator, so it will just stay dormant. In order to find such malware through emulators, you'll need to keep upgrading your emulators. And please remember that virus designers, so to speak, find new and better ways to counteract. Well, you can also recompile the application and look at the source code, but that might take a lot of time. And please know that modern viruses are all obfuscated, so you can lose your precious little time. So we obviously need a faster vector of counterattack. Digging through the code is a lot of fun, but this is something that should be done by somebody else. This is something for them to do, while our ambition is different. We have to close down the vector of attack for the hackers as soon as we can. In the emulation, we discovered like 50 host names that we could we could close down. And in virtualization, the analyst would only find 10. And that gives you an understanding of the margin of error we're talking about here. So the first launch of that virus told us it only had a single CNC host. After we started the code, we found 12 or 15 more hosts on it, but on our bench in a single day, we found 53. Now we need reverse engineers, we need programmers to read the source codes. Well, the interests of a cell operator are very different, and we only need like 2 analysts and a single programmer, a single software developer. to kill these monetization routines. Well, this is our architecture, by the way. You see the structure of our sandbox, right? We have this bench with diverse mobile devices running different operating systems. And we're trying to have a representative selection of devices, the most popular devices in the market, with the most vulnerable OS versions. And then we use analyzers to see how different malware would behave on all these devices. And then our analyst will talk to that analyzer through a particular web interface.
Ну, собственно, если говорить о технической части решения, неважно, на чем написан сервер,
It doesn't really matter to us which database is used and which particular language you're using. It could be Postgres, MySQL, it could be Python or whatever. Again, for this analyzer, you need the traditional Android frameworks, same as you were using in Vanguard and OpenMax. So these are standard developer kits, nothing really mind-boggling, nothing special, no rocket science. Shown here is the way this analyzer works. So you see that it tracks the activity of all the applications on your mobile phone. It analyzes this behavior and collects statistics. And then the analyst will work with all the stats. And we'll discover infected host names, CNCs, and the other information could be useful for further analysis. No, we are not saying that this project could replace your standard analyzers, real-time analyzers, your anti-fraud rules. This is like an additional heuristic exercise that can improve your security standards. I will tell you later how you can easily build it into your routines. So here are several mobile device screenshots. So several applications that are considered to be malicious were analyzed here. One is called MMS Photo. Well, it's usually downloaded in a very simple manner. If you want to check out my juicy photos, please follow this link. And you see nothing if you're not running an Android device. If you, say, approach it via your computer. Well, and then essentially you install the application, you give it all the rights, and then it tells you, oh, I'm sorry, there was a mistake, you'll have to delete it. But obviously nothing useful gets deleted. Well, in our test, this application lay dormant for about an hour, and after that it started working. And this tells me that a proper emulator probably wouldn't discover anything. And then what it would do, it would talk to the CNC and would transfer some technical information about the device and the user, and awaited further instructions. What you see over there is the subscriber ID. This is the seller operator ID. In any case, all this is fake data. And after all, it's all old, so you wouldn't be able to exploit this information, guys. Well, an analyst doesn't really have to look too much at the phones because all the relevant information is displayed in his dashboard. So you'll see that there is some suspicious activity coming from a particular phone. That, say, mass photo application is talking to some weird domain. And another example we're showing here we'll tell you more about it later. So the analyst will see this activity and will study in more detail. We'll see, for example, that a request was sent to the CNC. In return, it got a command. We were lucky that this was a plain text command. So this plain text command says, send an SMS with such and such text to such and such number. Now, usually this is how they use Trojans, right? All the incoming SMSs are deleted, so a user will not even know that something happened, well, until he checks his account statement, obviously. Now we'll talk about dynamic host names. This is in fact a very interesting case. Trojan SMS botnet. Again, it lay dormant for some time. And interestingly, it often masquerades as one of the leading AV applications, which is ironic, right? And this stuff just stays there in the tray, and very often it doesn't even show its icon in the list of applications. In some other cases, it camouflages itself as some popular services and video games. So what you see here is that the first time I launched, we were able to identify a single host name it tried talking to, but as we analyzed the code, and it took us quite some time because it was an obfuscated application. So as we analyzed, we found 12 more host names, but then we sent it to our lab, and they discovered the full range of IPs at a staggering 53. Well, shown here is the algorithm we use in order to identify a suspicious application as a malware in our sandbox. Well, let me tell you the rest of the story about Trojan SMS botnets. Around New Year time, this application actually connected to a premium service on the internet, and then pretended to be interested in getting a subscription for movies or books I don't remember. So it was redirected to the landing page of the cell operator, where again they saw like a bona fide invitation to enter the details and enter the CAPTCHA code. Well, the CAPTCHA code, quite usefully for the operators, was in Russian. However, there is a simple way to circumvent it. You can send the CAPTCHA code to a popular service where people recognize CAPTCHA codes for money, which they did. And then the right text is entered by the application in the landing page. After that, the user gets an SMS asking him whether he really wants to get this content, and the application obviously confirms it, deleting all the correspondence in the process, all the correspondence with the service. So what you see are all the screenshots. This is one of the bank Trojans. So this particular application starts sending requests to all the popular services, checking whether any cards or accounts are connected to this particular phone number. And you see that all the requests are return zero answers or false answers, that is, no services are connected. But yeah, it keeps trying and keeps deleting all these messages. And then you'll see that when it finally hits the treasure trove, it sent all the technical data about the device, about the user, about all his accounts via an SMS in cipher to the CNC. Let me explain why we collect all this information. Because you must be wondering what's the value of all that. Well, first and foremost, it enables you to collect a signature database that should enable you to better find vulnerabilities in your network. Secondly, as we rely on heuristic analysis and a range of algos, we can use the same signature database in order to identify the users, the subscribers that are expected to be in the risk area. And then you can, for example, notify your subscribers that their devices must have been exposed. It's a great idea to install a premium AV solution. And this is exactly what we are showcasing here. Now, these are different MTS blank pages saying, we don't really recommend you go there. Dear subscriber, we cannot really guarantee the security of your device. Please don't go there. Please download an AV. And by the way, if you distrust a particular cell operator, you might like the fact that after that, Google Chrome will also show a similar warning, so it might persuade some people. We hope. So MTS in particular is testing different language there. Now, we can't block individual host names under the Russian legislation, and obviously this is a great opportunity to update our laws. In a typical fraud, money will be stolen from a bank. Say CNC runs within a network of one operator, defrauding money from subscribers of another operator, and a collector is a subscriber of the third operator. And this is a great way for the baddies to exploit the legal environment in this country, because the big three don't really talk much to each other. Eventually, all the big three will be fined. But you know what? Now we have developed some routines, so my recommendation is to no longer try doing that to our subscribers. Obviously, the industry will greatly benefit from developing a single CERT center. And by the way, we are showing all those errors because indeed it can easily be convoluted. For money laundering purposes, the money will not simply go in a straight line. There will be lots of loops there. Exchange of data is extremely difficult in the current environment, so it's good that the central bank last year, in Russia, had this initiative about establishing a financial CERT. I hope mobile operators are invited. It's funny that the Germans have done all that. They have Osmon, I think is the name of the organization. It has been in existence for 2 years. They have protocols, they have XMLs, they have agreements on how to exchange information. They have it, it's up and running. It seems to be very functional. They have gray listing, they have scoring that's built into the anti-fraud systems, and it doesn't take much. It's just a communication routine for the banks and the cell operators. And then the operators are free to use the information as they want. For example, if they see a number that they consider suspicious, they check it against the database. For example, they can block it straight away. Or they can just notify the subscribers that they should not really interact with this particular number. Although it would be much better to block it. And such a CERT would certainly help the industry fight the widely spread botnets. They usually have a CEC in one network and the rest in the other. Well, we certainly hope that we'll live to see this future when fighting and finding and catching fraudsters like that would be very easy. But I think before this happens, we'll have all sorts of other advanced threats to combat. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you for your interest. I believe this will be indeed the final part of our research, because now that we've told you everything we possibly could, the system will take on a life of its own. Thank you. Indeed, we are broadcasting everything, so please use the mic, okay? You probably know there is the flip side of the coin. Well, I'm not going to drop any names, but we all know that operators often distribute anonymous SIM cards. They do it like at subway stations. And it's very easy to get those anonymous SIM cards in order to actually take the money out of the system, so to speak. They will be used by drops and meals. And as the head of Information Security Department of One Payment System, I believe this is one of the most prevalent fraud channels. Under the current legislation, in order to perform any monetary activities, you must have passport details, and anonymous SIM cards will be blocked after some time. Right, but there is this limit, right, of 15,000 rubles. So whatever amount you have below that would be like $300, it will be fine. Well, the problem you mentioned, sir, in my opinion, is not a matter for information security people. It's rather something that the other security guys must be talking and thinking about. I mean, I feel your pain, sir, but I don't think that this particular dart should be thrown at us. Yeah, but you seem to be part of MTS. Why don't you talk to the other security guys there? Because this is indeed the most widely used channel. Absolutely. That's why we say it's so important to establish a common center that would exchange information. Okay. Thank you. More questions, please. Hi, my name is Nikita Lutin from Experian. Have you considered using the existing interbank systems such as the National Hunter? Because we do have some systems in place that are used by the actors to exchange information. Oh, it would be good. However, if you try controlling even IMC, subscribers can easily get mad with you, and you will be fined by the regulators. You know, fraudsters exchange everything. It's pretty stupid that we don't exchange any information. Well, I'm hearing that a cert like this is being, well, not created yet, but discussed, at least. Well, thank you very much. Unless you have any other questions, well, thank you very much then.